The big question for me going into F1 Circus 91 was, what makes it different from the original F1 Circus? And the answer turned out to be a lot less than I'd like. Nichibutsu, also known as Nihon Busan, has got to be one of the more idiosyncratic game companies out there. At this point in their history, they've locked in on two things that they want: F1 racing and strip mahjong. I'll get to the second one eventually in the series, but for now, it's F1 racing. In 1991, Nichibutsu was really hitting F1 hard. This was the first year that they sponsored the Lotus F1 team. See, there's their logo on the wing of the car. And if you know your F1, then you know that Lotus in the early 90s was, actually pretty bad. Okay, you can't blame Nichibutsu for that. But it does feel a bit awkward when you're sponsoring an F1 team in part to promote your F1 video games, and they score 3 points in the season. F1 Circus 91 does not include the Lotus team. Presumably the game was finalized before Nichibutsu signed the papers for the sponsorship. And so while you will have your pick of around a dozen racing teams, they all have slightly off names. The game offers 3 different modes: World Championship, Free Attack, and Training. World Championship and Free Attack returned from the first game, and they wind up working pretty much the same. They've got some cleaned up presentation, but there's nothing new there. The Training mode, on the other hand, is something a little bit different. It offers you 6 challenges to develop your skills. Every challenge has 2 parts, each of them being a small segment of track that you have to run. You've got a time limit to complete that segment in, and these are less than 15 seconds each. You can also adjust how smooth your steering is. And then all you have to do is run that section of track in that time limit. Do it for both tasks, and you complete that step in training. And if you complete the first 5 steps in training, then you have to complete a track under a time limit. One of the big problems with the first F1 Circus is that the game threw you into the deep end. And this training mode seems to be an attempt to rectify that. And that said, I don't think it's actually an effective bit of training. The things that make F1 Circus so difficult, and I'll get to them soon enough, can't really be addressed like this. The primary difference between World Championship mode and Free Attack mode is Free Attack lets you pick any track that you like. And of course you get points depending on how well you place in World Championship mode. After you enter your name and pick a racing team, then you reach the information screen for your race. You can adjust the settings for your car, and some of these are just control adjustments, like the steering and if you want an automatic transmission or manual. But you can also tune your wing, tire, suspension, brake, and gearing for that track. Naturally, you'll need to make perfect adjustments if you want to do well. The course option will tell you the expected weather, and it will let you set up how many laps you want to run. It defaults to the lowest amount, which will be about 9 or 10 laps for the race. Or you can double the race length, or double it again, or double it again. At the maximum length, it'll take you about an hour to run the whole thing. With that set, you can choose free run if you just want to run laps for a while, or practice when you're ready to qualify. When you practice, you start out in the pit lane and do 1 warm-up lap, and then you complete 2 more laps for your qualifying time. In World Championship mode, you have to beat a qualifying lap time to get into the race, and if you don't beat it, then you just go back and practice until you do. In Free Attack, you always qualify. Though unless you know what you're doing and did everything perfectly, you're going to be starting in 16th place. On the track, F1 Circus 91 is played from a top-down view. Button 1 accelerates and button 2 brakes, and if you're using a manual transmission, up and down change gears. I've had 2 primary problems with the F1 Circus series in the past. First, there's not enough fine control over the steering. F1 Circus 91 does not fix that. You've got 16 directions you can point your car in, and it's not really smooth steering. The other problem I had was that the game was way too fast. I'd run into corners almost as soon as they were indicated. And that hasn't been addressed either. They haven't even zoomed out the view to give you more time to react. If you want to finish a lap in F1 Circus 91, then you have to memorize the track. And I mean, you'll need to know how long it is between every turn because you can't see it coming up. In fact, for F1 Circus 91, they actually reduced the length of time between when an indicator for a corner is coming up and when you see the corner. Reduced it so much that on some tracks there are corners where you don't get any indicator. Like I said, you've got to memorize the course. An aspect to this that I either didn't notice in the original F1 Circus or has been made significantly worse in F1 Circus 91 is that they seem to have revised the checks for your car colliding with an object so that it doesn't occur every single frame. That means if you're traveling at top speed and miss a corner, you can pass through objects. Usually this will mean you're stuck in terrain and will have to retire from the race, but in a few places you can access unintended shortcuts. Well, shorter distance, but you still lose all of your speed twice getting in and out of them. Damage to your car is tracked for 4 locations: suspension, tires, wing, and brakes. When your suspension is damaged, you have trouble traveling in a straight line. Tire problems means you can't turn as well. Wing damage seems to affect your top speed, and of course brake damage means you're more likely to plow into barriers, killing race enthusiasts. You can pull yourself in for a pit stop to fix all of these things, and even in the extra long races, you only pit for damage. There is no fuel. If you're playing in World Championship mode, then after you complete a race, you'll get your points added to your standing and move on, and then you can choose to save your progress to the Tenno-Koei 2 memory bank, or just get a password if you don't have that peripheral attached to the back of your PC Engine. You'll need to save your progress in some way, because completing World Championship mode requires that you play through 8 full seasons. That is 128 races. That's a bit much to do in one sitting. Japanese players like the F1 Circus series, but it seems like F1 Circus 91 might have been a step too far for them, because I kept finding people complaining that the game was just too fast and the courses too windy. My own feeling on F1 Circus 91 is that it's definitely not a game for me, and I don't think it's a great top-down racer. You have to have a good view and tight controls for a top-down racer to work, and F1 Circus 91 doesn't have either of those. I found it more frustrating to play than fun. I'm not going to say F1 Circus 91 is a bad game. As the second entry in a massive franchise, the games were clearly striking a chord at the time. I just struggle to see anybody enjoying it these days, though.